Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander and Zeneba Bowers is joining me on the show today. Zeneba hails from Nashville, Tennessee, where she plays in the Nashville Symphony with her husband, Matt Walker. But in addition to being a string playing couple, together they are authors of several travel books and run Little Roads Europe, a travel blog and travel itinerary service. Little Roads is for people who want to discover the tiny hidden gems of Europe and really experience life in the small towns. Today, we dive into how they discovered their love for small villages of Italy and Ireland, how they turned their passion for travel into a business, and what it is like to build a business while being a full-time orchestral musician. Listen as Zeneba outlines the secret to job satisfaction in a symphony, and it's not what you think. Before we begin, a couple of quick things. Please join the conversation at facebook.com/crushingclassical, as well as Crushing Classical on Instagram. If you love what you see, it would mean so much to us if you would comment on posts and share them with your classical musician friends and colleagues. And if you haven't done it yet, join our Facebook group, Classical Cats. We continue the conversation inside the group on the topics we talk about on our episodes. We also recently made some improvements in the group. There are some awesome resources about things we've talked about regarding your Facebook feed, as well as a post that organizes all of our episodes by category. So now you can easily find an episode if you're looking for a certain topic. You can join Classical Cats at facebook.com/groups/crushingclassical. I'd also like to thank Fix Music for being a sponsor of Crushing Classical Podcast. Have you checked out Fix for your sheet music purchases yet? I'm so excited to have them as a sponsor. It's a really great site. Fixmusic.com is your online resource for affordable, high-quality sheet music. Fix also offers unique buying options for individuals, teachers, and schools. Whether you have a large private teaching studio or you run a music program, Fix has a solution for you. Contact them through their website for more information. Fix offers priority and priority express shipping at super affordable rates, meaning they do not pad their shipping rates to make money. If you need sheet music fast, Fix will expedite it to you as inexpensively as possible. Also, remember to use the discount code CRUSH and get 10% off your order. Let's get started. Hey, Zeneba, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Good to talk.
Great. Thanks for being on today. So you're a violinist in the Nashville Symphony.
Yes, I am. I'm assistant principal second.
Oh, great. So how long have you been a member of that job? Orchestra.
I came in 1999 when they got a grant. Well, not a grant. They got a good chunk of money from a local supporter to bring in 13 new string players in an effort to beef up the string sections before they went on their first tour to Carnegie Hall.
Oh.
And I came in the second violin section along with 13 other people that were spread throughout the strings.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a year or so, I took an audition and moved over into the first violin section. And then maybe like 1 or 2 more years elapsed, and then I took the audition to move into the chair that I hold now. And so I've been here since 99, but I've been here in like, slightly different capacities. And of course I spent 4.5 years under tenure review. So that was
4.5 years?
Well, it's a 1.5 year tenure review for each position.
Oh, oh my God.
5 years. No tenure. That's a lot of nail biting.
Yeah, it is. Oh my gosh. So your husband's in the symphony too, right?
Yeah, he is in the cello section.
Did you meet there or did you come in at the same time or how did that work?
He came in as one of the 13 members.
Oh.
And that was when I met him.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
I didn't know him before, but what's really funny is that in this very, very small world that we live in, we had many mutual connections, like friends, and he even dated people that I used to be friends with back in college, which is just so funny because this business is so small.
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons not to be a jerk.
It's
everyone
a really
knows everyone. So
So that's cool. So you met there, and then I know there came a point where well you there you got together, you got married, and you guys decided to go to Europe together. So tell me more about how that came about.
right. Well, it's funny because over time we've really evolved together to enjoy a lot of the same things.
Hmm.
But when we were like dating and when we first got married, um, we were, I think, more different people. And I had traveled to Europe a few times for work. I could never have afforded to go just to hang out.
Right.
Did work in a couple different opera festivals, and I knew that traveling to Europe was definitely something that I wanted to do. And Matt had never left the United States before.
Oh.
And so when we got married, I didn't, I really felt that travel was going to be something that I was going to want to do after we got married, even if he didn't want to do it. Like,
Hmm.
I would either do it by myself or I would do it with my friends. But I was hoping that he would get interested in it. And so when we got married, I had asked that for our honeymoon that we would go to Italy, and so that I could take him there to kind of introduce it to him in the hopes that he would like it. And
Yeah.
we had a really, really um, cheap. Well, I guess cheap is the wrong term, but affordable wedding. I did all the food myself, and my friend made the cake, and we got married in the backyard here of our home.
Oh,
And
cool.
I bought my wedding dress for $32.25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we took all the money that we would normally have been spent on a more expensive wedding and threw it at going to Italy for the honeymoon.
Oh, that's cool.
And then when we got there, it was after that trip, Matt fell in love with it over there too and wanted to go. And so it was that initial trip then snowballed into all these other trips. And now
More
that's
trips.
a huge part of what we do. We kind of throw all of our extra time and money at travel.
Cool. So how many trips did you end up taking? Like, so usually people go, "Oh my God, I love Europe so much. I'll go again in a few years." But you guys were really like, "No, we're going a lot." Like, how often did you start going to Europe or
Well,
Italy
the first trip
specifically?
was in May, and that was the honeymoon. And then I got back, and then that's close to the end of the symphony season.
Hmm.
And so then I was kind of doing some research over the summer of like, where we could go. And I happened to find really cheap tickets to England. And so then we went to England, and then I remember this was like, seriously, this is 11 years ago, and you can't get things like this really anymore. But over the Thanksgiving uh, holiday, we went to Germany, and the entire trip, it was like 6 days or something, but the entire trip cost $1,800
Oh my gosh.
because you could get all these hotel deals and you got flight deals. And so, and we're always going to small towns. So that really helps because in the off season, small towns really, really are discounting their hotels.
Okay, so how did you realize? I mean, most people when they go, they're like, "Oh, I want to go to Rome, Venice, the Amalfi Coast, or all these places where everyone's heard of." So, what made you decide to check out small towns initially?
Well, it was actually the very first trip because we were doing the exact trip that you're describing that
Mhm.
everyone wants to do.
Yeah.
We started in Rome and then we flew out of Venice. And so going in between there, um, instead of taking a train, we decided to drive so we could see a little bit of the countryside.
Right.
And we spent a couple of days, like basically directly in between Rome and Venice in a region called Emilia Romagna. And this is the breadbasket of Italy. And I booked us into a farm where you stay on a farm and they cook for you from their produce.
Oh,
And so, but I had planned this just as an in between because it was logistically made sense. It financially made sense. And I was picturing that that was going to be the least interesting part of the trip before we left, because it was bookended with Rome and Venice, and these are these two huge things that you have to see,
Yeah.
and they are wonderful. I'm not discounting them, but it was funny because when we got home, we realized that the most impactful, most special part of the trip was actually this farm stay.
Mm.
And that we felt like we'd had the most memorable experiences and the most authentic time there. And so it was that experience that got me thinking, well, let's start looking into small towns everywhere, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so really seeking out, like, over time we've focused more on Italy and Ireland, but at the very beginning I was just going wherever I would find the cheapest tickets. And sometimes I would book us into Switzerland. I would get us into Zurich for a cheap rate. And then I would just take a look at the map and follow the road until it petered out into walking paths that go into the Alps, into the mountains. And I would look for a bed and breakfast that was the closest to the walking path, like that kind of thing.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome.
Let me just go to the most remote, most out of the way place that I can find. And we did that quite a bit. And over time, as we did that, I mean, and that is actually really affordable way to travel. It's definitely memorable way to travel. And over time, as we did that, we started focusing in more on regions that we particularly really loved in Italy and then in Ireland. And as we got a larger base of knowledge, that was how we ended up putting our books together.
Okay. So I know when we initially talked, you told me that it sort of snowballed into a situation where you guys were doing all these trips and your friends and family were finding out, hey, you're finding out these really great ways to do Europe affordably and really, really like unique experience because you're finding all these tucked away places. And so how did that evolve where all of a sudden, you had a situation on your hands where because right now you have a business, a travel business, and,
Yeah.
and, but it didn't start out like that, right? Like,
No, I never viewed myself, and I still don't view myself as a business person.
okay.
I never envisioned myself starting an actual LLC or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
I did start a nonprofit with my chamber group, but that was completely artistically driven.
Yeah.
And then starting a nonprofit was a necessary function of, like, hey, it was coming from my heart. I want to be on stage. I want to perform with people. I want to perform music that I love.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, I have to have a nonprofit so we can fundraise and have a board. I mean, all that business aspect was never anything that was very appealing to me. It was
Just like a necessary evil kind of thing.
how to do it.
Yeah.
But I certainly didn't think about having an actual business. That just wasn't in my, like, in my imaginings as an artist. But what happened was we were taking all these trips just for fun and exploration. And then I would have family and friends of family and etc. write to me and say, can you help me plan a trip? I'm going, and asking me for advice. And I would spend many hours every week just writing out travel tips to other people and helping other people with their trips. And it was getting really overwhelming in terms of time. And so we decided, you know what, let's just take everything that we know and throw it on a website so that when people write to me, I can just say, go to this website. And, so it was like a free website that we set up with basically little reviews of every single place we'd ever been, restaurants and hotels and sites. And then we could just send people to it. And I mean, it was huge. It was just crazy. And so the website itself was huge. There's so much information.
Wow.
And then a friend of mine, I was over having a cocktail hour with a friend, and they said, this is a business, what you're doing. I mean, and I hadn't really, it's kind of sounds kind of dumb now, but I just had not thought of it in that way. And they were saying you should really incorporate and make this a business. And so, so we started, and this happened to come about at a time when the orchestra was in extreme flux, and we were in a negotiation that was very tenuous and very scary. And neither of us were on the negotiating committee, so we were not privy to what was actually going on.
Right. Yeah.
Was publicly known, and so what we decided to do was go ahead and write. And we just didn't know, are we going to be employed in the fall? Like, we just
right.
Didn't. And so we decided, like, let's go ahead and write a book about small town Tuscany. We'd had a lot of experience there, a lot of people asking us for travel tips. And at the time you could put out, you still can, but put out a free book on Amazon Kindle. And so we just said, all right, let's, instead of sitting here nail biting and getting a bleeding ulcer over the summer,
right.
Let's just write a book,
Yeah.
So we wrote a book it had 7 itineraries of different regions of Tuscany, and we put it out just to see, like, what the hell? Why not? And, cause it was free, and what else were we going to do?
Right.
So we put that out, and that did really, really well. And that was great. And I probably should have just, like, gotten in physical shape instead. I probably should have just said, let's take up, like, competitive biking or something. I mean, if you're really stressed, it's probably a better idea to go kung fu or anything else. But instead, we wrote a book telling people how to eat and drink their way through small town Tuscany. So we did that. And then we decided to search out a real publisher who could turn our book into something that looked like not a bunch of photocopies like our first book looked like.
Right. Yeah.
We're not designers, and really neither of us have any skill in that arena at all. And so the book did not look very good. I mean, it was just put out by 2 musicians. So anyway, so we got a real publisher, and then we started also doing making itineraries where people pay us to make itineraries for them.
Okay. So did that happen when you're having that sort of scary summer where the orchestra was doing that negotiation? I mean, a lot of people have been there. We've been there over here in North Carolina. Like, you just don't know what's going on. And they're having these meetings, and you're not in them, and you don't know what's happening. So the worst case scenario is coming up. And so, like, that's a scary time. So you wrote the book, were you also thinking, hey, let's make a business where people can console with us? Or was that part of the planning when you were having that tough, stressful summer?
That part came a little bit later. I think that I'm pretty, like, I'm a skeptical person, and I always assume people will meet me with skepticism. And no matter what my motive is, like, it's funny because with Alias, with my chamber group, when we first got started, every concert was a benefit for a local nonprofit. So when I went to different nonprofits and said, will you partner with us? What I want from you is help selling tickets and help promoting the concert, get butts and seats. And what you get from me is a free concert plus all of the proceeds. Well, no one believed me. They thought this was like a total scam, and I went like place after place, and they're like, what is the scam? What are you getting out of this? Why are you here, scumbag? And it so long. And it took a long time to establish for our ensemble a reputation of non-scammery, because it doesn't sound right. And so at any rate, I was just I just mentioned that because I am very intimately familiar with people assuming I'm a scammer and having to prove otherwise. And I don't know if you've ever looked at any, like, travel planner websites, but a lot of them are really scammy. And people who are doing travel planning for other people, and the travel planner will be someone who hasn't traveled in 5 or 10 years themselves.
Mm.
So they're just sitting at home doing. I don't even know what that is.
Right. And there's that fear of like if I take travel advice from the wrong person and I go over there and end up and there's like I'm in the middle of a field and there's no bread and breakfast and
Oh, totally.
all.
And it's also like sometimes it seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like budget airlines over in Europe where it is too good to be
Where
true.
they're like, it's $1 to fly. And then they're like, but they charge you per pound of your body and your suitcase.
Exactly. And they are dropping you off in a field where, whoops, there's no rental cars there, so
Right.
it's like that is a scam. And so a lot of it can seem, and I totally get it that people are approaching us and thinking this has got to be a scam because I'm telling you, hey, you can stay in this castle for less than $100 a night. And they're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get there and it actually is as good as we said. But part of the other thing with the scamminess of it is just that lots and lots of travel planners will take kickbacks. So they send you to a hotel or a restaurant because every time you go, they're getting a cut.
Oh.
And that's a specific thing that we do not do because how can people know if it's legit if we're getting a kickback from it?
Exactly.
So I get it why people are skeptical, but I went through that whole thing there just to explain it to you because that was one of the reasons why we started the website in the first place, to show that we had a body of knowledge, because I assumed people would think I was a scammer. And so I wanted to demonstrate an actual body of knowledge first.
That makes sense. So had that happened before, say, you started your ensemble Alias, which we'll talk about a little bit, but also there's so much to talk about. We're going to get to the bottom of all of this cool stuff. But like, was with the Alias, when you started, talking to nonprofits and offering that amazing offer, was that the first time that you were experiencing somebody perceiving you as scamming them, or had that happened to you before? Or I'm just curious.
That's kind of interesting. Like that was so impactful to me, but I guess I would say that I wouldn't say scamming, but I would say that I've always felt a little bit out of place in our business, just because growing up I came from the poorer side of town. And a lot of people that enter this business or are doing it are people who can afford lessons and good instruments.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not the case with me. I got a free instrument to start. I got free lessons to start. It would just. I wasn't. So anyway, I've always felt a little out of place because, I've come from a different financial bracket than a lot of the people that I was studying around. I went to an expensive private school that I paid for, through undertaking bazillions of loans, where a lot of people that were there with me, their parents were paying their way.
Right.
We were in different financial brackets because that wasn't an option for me.
Yeah, I remember experiencing that the first time, like arriving in youth orchestra, and you're like, okay, I'm the only one who didn't come from those fancy suburbs. You know what I mean? Like,
and so it's like, I wouldn't say I felt like a scammer, but I did definitely feel that I didn't belong there.
okay.
And so I think maybe that's an undercurrent, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that makes sense.
So I wasn't really offended. It wasn't like a new feeling to me when I went in and people
say,
okay, what are you doing?
Who are you anyway? What are you doing here?
It was just funny because it was like, I wasn't afraid either, because it's like, well, this is very transparent. Dig all you want. This is the deal. That's what we're going to do. And as long as we found just a few nonprofits that would work with us, then we could begin to establish a reputation of non-scammery, which could then, move forward. And so if you, in a way, if you don't have anything to hide, then it's not that scary. It just took some people taking a little leap of faith with us. That's this very similar to, at least the feeling to me is very similar to what happened with Little Roads. where, the first few clients that we had who had to really trust us to do their vacation because, we hadn't done any before.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it probably helped that we did huge discounts at the beginning for the first clients because you should. I mean, why should they trust you? So, once we had a few clients under our belt, then it started to it's just like it was with Alias, word of mouth started to spread. And then once we had the books put out too, it helped because it showed like the book equals legitimacy.
Right. Someone published it and you convinced that person that it was real and everything. So yeah, it makes sense.
See what I know. It's in a book,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's already there. So yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting doing this because it is a business, and running a business is different than running a nonprofit.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead. Sorry.
We're just trying to wrap our mind around running things like a business.
Yeah. And it's so different from being a musician. And it's different from being a musician who starts a nonprofit, which is like another level above just showing up to a job and playing your instrument. So one of my questions is, now that I have a good kind of picture about where your career is right now, and it's so varied and so cool. And I want to know, if you had, and I always ask my guests this on the show, some kind of defining moment. And it might have been that summer where you were waiting to hear what was going to happen with the symphony. But did you have like a fuck this moment where you were like, okay, I have to do something different, or I want to do something different, or I feel that I could just continue on this safe path where I know what's happening, or I can do this new path where I'm and you said that Alias and the travel business are kind of intertwined, and I guess I'm making a really convoluted way of asking, like, did you have a moment, like a fuck this moment where you're just like, damn it, this is going to change. I'm going to do some different stuff.
It would be hard. It's funny because I would say that my fuck this moment has been stretched out over about 20 years, but as would have done back when I was in college, when I looked at people who were old enough to be my parents or grandparents who were working in orchestras who hated their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I never want to get there. How can I not get there?
Yeah.
And that is a really hard thing as an orchestral musician, because, when you're looking at your 54th time of playing Beethoven 6.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh, Mother of God, take me now. No. But so I think I always understood when I came into the job, and as I was going into orchestral music as a career, as a young person, I understood back then, this is not going to be the vehicle for me to have artistic satisfaction fully. Okay, this will be a vehicle in which I do enjoy this artistically, and I'm going to work to enjoy it. But this is not going to be the culmination of artistic happiness for me.
Right.
Because as an orchestral musician, and I was going to say, unless I'm concertmaster, but even if you're concertmaster, I mean, you are not going to get to choose the repertoire. You are not going to be, you're going to be told what to do and how to do it. And I knew that as a part of the gig going in. So that is partly why I felt so strongly that I had to find alternative venues and for me to express myself artistically. So when I first got to Nashville, I focused 100% on the orchestra. My goal was to understand the lay of the land here and to do the best job that I could and to feel stable here. Mm-hmm. And that's why, Alias wasn't founded until 3 years after I got here, because my focus was 100% towards the orchestra. Mm-hmm. Once I felt more comfortable here, then I said, well, now that I've like achieved stability here, now I want to try to branch out and do something for myself artistically. And then this is from where Alias came.
I see.
And then I spent a lot of time doing that, and I guess then Little Roads kind of started after that for a lot of reasons, but then, you know, in the fuck this moment category, that summer where we were sitting here and it's like, are we going to have this job or not?
Right.
You know, obviously we wanted to focus our energy in a constructive way. And so we focused on writing this book, but it was also a career and a business decision to say, let's try to, because, you know, let's try to do something that could turn into a revenue stream. Right. We like, right? Because I don't want to have to go take, I mean, I could use the summer to go try to become an accountant or like, I don't know what else, you know, or like, what I wanted to do. We still wanted to try to do something, maybe like a Walmart greeter or something, but we still wanted to do something that we loved, you know, and honestly, all the other musicians in town that were in the symphony were also panicking, and were also so you know, putting the pedal to the metal to try to find a lot of extra gigs wasn't really an option because everyone was doing that. You know, everybody was scrambling for like extra gigs. So it was, I was thinking, you know, it's a kind of a losing battle to try to say, oh, well, let me see if I can branch out and, you know, start a wedding business or whatever. I mean, everybody was doing that. And so it felt like this was a thing that we could do that had a chance of success, a decent chance of success, of something that we actually loved. So I think it was there. And also I have always really felt, even from when I was like in the very first years of college, that I did not want to be one of those people that is still performing when people are like, why the hell is she still performing? You know, I want to be able to leave while people are saying, well, why the hell is she leaving? And not pulling me off with one of those big hooks, you know? And so that was
I just get like it.
Because if I'm going to spend all this time creating a career as a performer, then I don't want to, I'm sorry if this sounds harsh, but I don't want to diminish it by, you know, continuing to put things out there that are not at a high standard. So how could I, you know, I don't know. I feel like as performers, we do have more of a limited shelf life, not as limited as ballet dancers, but still limited. And so this career that we have of traveling and writing feels like something that we could do well into our older years, and it would only actually get better because it's not a physical field. It's, you know?
Right. So it could, so do you see yourself like, is that a natural progression of your career going into, when you decide to stop performing, that it could go in that direction where you know, that you're.
I think so. I mean, I feel like, I really enjoy the traveling and the writing that we do, and the making trips for clients is actually really a fun thing to do. I mean, because people, you know, we do a lot of honeymoons for people, and you know, to create somebody's like honeymoon for them, it's a really special thing, you know? So it's, you feel connected with these people because they're happy and they're having a good time, and it's important. And so at any rate, like, it's a meaningful thing in addition to being a business. But I think, like, I don't know how much longer I'll be playing. I feel really good about my playing right now. But I do want to go out more like Seinfeld and less like Happy Days. You know?
I love that
And
analogy. Oh my God.
I think that like I still could contribute in this field, not as a performer. Like I could still be artistic director of this ensemble or of another ensemble, or I could be doing
Yeah.
consulting, could be helping with programming or grant. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could be doing that aren't physically playing the violin.
Yeah,
That,
I love that. I love that point of view because so many people don't see outside of their own box as far as what's possible for them in considering that they actually have knowledge about the business in a greater context than just their instrument that they play. So I love that you can see that about yourself. And speaking to the contribution of what your business, your travel business does for the travelers. Like I just always know whenever anyone asks me for, a restaurant, oh, I'm going to go to Chicago and what restaurant should I go to or something because I lived there for several years, I always feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you my favorite place and if they end up going there and loving it, it's such a good feeling. So that's
oh,
probably what it's like for you guys.
no, it definitely is. And it's not, the thing is that it's definitely that a lot of the places we find are way off the beaten path. So we kind of always have a joke around here that we're sending people to these places. We're not getting any kickbacks like from the places,
Mm-hmm.
except for the part where they're remaining open so we can eat there. So
Right. Yeah.
like,
And exactly.
the more people I send to these places, the higher likelihood of them continuing to remain open so I can go eat there,
That's enough of a
But,
kickback if it's a good
yeah,
restaurant.
totally. But there's also another thing which has been really cool about this, which is that in all of we have 3 guidebooks out now, and in all of them, we make a point of seeking out and finding uh, artists, like ceramic artists, or there's one woman I really love. We just saw her last week who does blown glass jewelry
Oh,
and leather and copper. And so we'll find these artists, and then we include them in our guides so that you're going to sites, you're going to castles, and you're going to see towns, and you're getting a great place to eat and this, but you're also going to visit these artists. And then we have these artists that write to us, and they just to write to us to say, hey, thank you for supporting my art, because these people came, like we send our clients there, but
hmm.
we know they're going. But what the coolest thing is when I get these pictures that these artists have sent us of people who bought our book. I have no idea who these people are, just random people bought the book on Amazon or whatever, and then went to this artist and bought a ceramic bowl or a leather book, and it's like, it's the coolest thing, because it's like we're supporting other artists over there who are continuing some of these artistic traditions that are like hundreds of years old, and that's a really cool thing.
That's so cool. I know, because you don't think about how am I supporting. I mean, you do think of it. You think of you're helping your client, but then also you're supporting all these businesses from far away. I
Oh,
love that.
totally. And
And
it's
artists.
like we haven't gotten into a lot of music over there because we're doing so much music here all the time that when we go over there, I'm not going over there to see concerts.
Right.
So maybe that will expand over time. I'm not sure, but like we're not going over there, and so I'm not really supporting musical artists over there per se, because I usually just want an oral AUR break, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So, because it's enough with practicing, we have so many concerts here, and then so much practicing. And the artistic director of this group, I have so much listening to do for programming, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So, I mean, I honestly, I can't remember the last time I used my CD player for anything other than research. I don't listen to music anymore in my free time because I just need some silence.
Right.
But
And
um,
you had mentioned in our previous conversation about how the travel that you do really gives you inspiration for music, but outside of music. Can you explain how that works for you?
well, yeah, I mean, I feel like few things to me are as boring as musicians who can only discuss music.
Right.
I've had that conversation about strings or how do you prepare this passage or who's your favorite conductor. I've had enough of those conversations for like 50 lifetimes. Ever need to talk about it. I just can't. When that's the only thing that we can talk about, it's just not that interesting to me. There's so much in the world that is beyond that. And I feel like as an artist, I can't bring anything to the stage if I'm so laser focused on only one section.
Right.
And it expands my experience, emotionally and mentally to be around other people, and this thing about being with other artists. I mean, last week we're in Modena with this glass artist, and she feels really strongly that her work is the expression of emotion. And it's so interesting because she's creating glass necklaces and earrings,
Mm-hmm.
and so you'd say, well, geez, that's just a business making jewelry, but she's so driven and passionate about it that it's the expression of emotion in glass. And that is just interesting to me. And to see that in a visual field that I don't work in and I don't know about,
Yeah.
helps me look in a different way at the music that we're playing. And so it's like that type of a connection with another person is more meaningful and more enlightening to me than talking about what scale system we use. I just can't with all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's because I don't know, it's like all the music that we love and that is the most meaningful to us, um, was driven by people who were writing about emotions that are deeper than just only music.
Mm-hmm.
They were driven by circumstances of the time, politics, relationships, or poverty. I mean, there were a lot of things that were driving them, and it wasn't just this kind of shell that we can put ourselves in as musicians that, is just focused on the logistics and the mechanics
Right.
of our field. So anyway, I guess like I feel like the traveling has expanded a lot of my thinking of how other people in the world get along, what are customs and what are traditions in other places,
Mm-hmm.
how we fit in. And I'm often very uncomfortable when we're traveling just because it's a new experience, or I'm having to speak in a foreign language, and that is a source of anxiety for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that discomfort is important for growth, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, how like it's seriously, the talking in another language is such a huge stumbling block for me. And it's funny because like I feel like any stage anxiety that I've had, and which I have struggled with quite a bit over the years, but stage anxiety that I've had is almost non-existent for me now, because 100% of my anxiety is just speaking Italian with Italians. Like I got a whole other problem, I'm like, oh my, I can play this brown thing with the stick. Like I know how, so easy. Just give me the brown thing with the stick and I can go on stage and do that. That's so easy compared to trying to conjugate verbs in a foreign language on the spot. So
Right.
that's kind of informed my playing in a way, because getting outside of my box of, of worrying about, is everything perfect on stage? I'm like, well, this anxiety is nothing compared to trying to figure out directions out the side of a car, talking to somebody on the street.
Right.
Like this is nothing.
Oh my gosh, that really gave you it just gave you a bigger picture. Like, hey, I don't need to be afraid of playing this thing when there's something out there bigger that's even more scarier now.
I'm seriously, I'm not. I'm so qualified to actually play the violin. Like I've trained my entire life. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn how to do. I'm totally good for that.
Yeah.
what I can't do is speak this language. Oh my God, and I have to do it all the time.
Yeah.
And so, and it would be much easier to just not do it. But I
Right.
feel like it's made me, I don't know, I don't want to say like a better person, but it's expanded me, and so shoving myself into that very uncomfortable situation is is just an important part of trying to grow, I guess.
Isn't that's such a great way of putting it? It really is, because we tend to, and I think maybe that's probably why a lot of people start to hate their jobs after a while, because after a while it's not, there's nothing, there's nothing risky, or not that risk or being scared has to, well, it's just the whole idea of making you uncomfortable, I think. That
Yeah.
whole concept. And if you get too comfortable, that's when you start to get complacent,
Or
bored,
yeah.
irritated.
It's, our field is, like I said, like it's it was never, so I mean, I always understood that we were going to be playing things a zillion times.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was going to happen. I never anticipated that we would be doing the proportion of pops that we are to classical. That's been a really hard pill for me to swallow. Um, but
Yeah.
but when I try to explain it to people that are not in our field, I'll say, okay, do you like Catcher in the Rye? I like Catcher in the Rye. Do you like it? Yes, you do like it. Okay. Do you want to read it 6 to 12 times every year? Every year for 40 years? Also, not be able to comment on it and not be able to think about it in the way that you think about it, but to interpret it only through someone else's vision, someone
Right.
who thinks a lot of themselves but isn't actually very smart. Is that something that you don't want to? And then would you just say, you know what, enough with The Catcher in the Rye? Like, I need a break. It's not that it's not a good book. It's just that I could do without reading that book again.
Right.
So, and so it's like,
But it's a classic, Zeneba.
I know. And the thing is that, but see, I don't want to get to where I dislike the very thing I got into this field for.
Right.
So how can I accomplish that? And I've spent so much time thinking about that. Like, I don't want bad conductors or bad musicians or just whatever, repetition itself with wonderful conductors and wonderful musicians. I don't want any circumstance of anything to get me to a point where I don't like the music that I entered this field in for the first place. So
Exactly.
how could that happen? And to me, the answer is by having multiple other things to do.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can go, if the only thing I was doing was the orchestra, then I would be beating my head against the wall because I didn't get to contribute, or I have to do it again. So I don't know. It's like, I don't take that. It's just going to sound bad, but I just don't take that seriously.
Right.
And then I don't have to, it's not a comment on me, what's going on in the orchestra, because I don't have any involvement in it. I go in and I do the best job that I can. I prepare, I present as well as I can. But when I go home, I have 2 other businesses to run that are reflective of my vision and idea.
Yeah, it totally puts it into perspective too, doesn't it? And it's true. It's true. The symphony it is a job. You were hired to do a specific thing. You weren't hired to give them feedback about what you think the programming should be or whatever. You were just hired to play your violin. And that's the thing about orchestras, not that it's a good thing or a bad thing or anything. It's just a place to go and to do
Yeah.
a certain thing and
I
get
mean,
money
like,
for it.
me getting stressed about what the programming is in the symphony is as what's the right word? It's like, it makes as much sense as me getting stressed about what they're serving at the restaurant down the street. Like, I have no involvement in that.
Right, right.
It is not a
Right.
reflection on me that the thing down the street makes, like, hamburgers with butterscotch on them. That's not me, man.
Right. Right.
So Like, I don't care. And that's fine. And so it's not, I don't know. I guess it could, depending on your viewpoint, that could sound bad, but to me, that sounds healthy. And I just go in, I do the best that I can with the training that I've had and my understanding. I go in and I do the best job I can. And I take responsibility for the things that I am responsible for. But I am not responsible for programming or ticket sales or, I mean, I don't have any involvement in that stuff. And so, but if that was my only thing, I'd be really stressed.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I hope that everyone who listens to this, who has a job, is able to shift their point of view just a little bit on that one, because you know how it is. It's hard to not care about those things. And I think you've really put it into perspective here with what you've just said, because it is hard not to care, but it really doesn't have anything to do with you unless you decide to go into the management and say, hey, can you hire me to be part of this decision-making process, which you might not want to do, but you either decide to really try to make a difference in it, or you recognize what it really is, which is a job that you were hired for to play at, and that's it,
100%. And I think that it also depends. You wouldn't necessarily have to be hired. You could be, depending on the situation and whatever orchestra you're in, it could be that management is really listening to, or really take it, or that maybe musicians have some agency over this type of thing. I mean, so it depends, and every situation is different, like any family,
Yeah.
It's just that I think a long time ago when I started Alias, I think I just realized, like, I want to have more involvement than would probably be appropriate for any single musician.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than try to expand that box into areas that might not be appropriate, I just decided to go ahead and start my own thing.
Yeah.
100% appropriate.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. You don't have to worry about it.
Right. I mean, so it's like, I just I felt like that. And I think all that said, there's, as an orchestral musician, there are things that I think that you are responsible for that aren't in the contract, like relations with the audience members, relations with donors, and outreach and things. So it's like, if you're at a concert, or how you appear on stage, it doesn't say in the contract that you have to not look bored out of your mind, but that is an important part of being professional,
Right.
And so, so that's not technically part of your job, but I think it is, right? It's not just, so when I say come in and do my job, I mean, my job to me means more than just laying notes down and looking bitter as hell while I'm doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. You take pride in it. And at the same time,
I mean, do you want this field to continue or not? Why would someone come and see? Why would they want to keep coming and seeing you play if you look like you're ready to kill yourself?
Right.
So, I mean, if you're on stage, there's a reason that the stage is lit. They can see you. It's like people that pick their nose in their car.
I've known people pick their nose on stage before.
Oh my God, I know. Yeah. It's like,
you forget. I think sometimes people forget that you can.
No, I know. I mean, we get so used to being on stage, and we do forget that we're visible sometimes, and I get it, but or we think that people aren't paying attention because we're a cog in a wheel or whatever, but they are paying.
They
so
are.
That is important. So when I say, like, I don't get involved in that, I guess I mean more like just things like, I mean, I have my roster of conductors that I hate too. I mean, everybody does. Come on. It's part of, like, that's part of it. But can one person really have that much impact over, like, I don't know. Sometimes when I hear people talking about, they get very deeply offended or very personally stressed about, what's going on stage. And I guess that's where I would get into, I just don't care.
Right.
Like I got I got something else to do when I leave here, that and that person isn't usually talking to you anyway. So don't worry
Right.
about it. I mean, there it's just it's a very hard thing to do, is to figure out where you can have an impact and where you have no impact, and then to figure out for yourself what is important. um like,
Yeah.
how can you be involved? Like, I think maybe for some people the answer would be um that they would get more involved by in the lives of their children.
Right.
Well, I don't have any. My children are these books and then the CDs from my group.
Hmm.
That's where I've focused all of my maternal energy, you know,
Right.
and
Right.
and oversight, and but
Yeah.
I
It's a
it,
decision of where you're gonna focus that extra energy. And it sounds to me like you've gotten a really great perspective for yourself and where you want to focus your energy in your career that's healthy for you, which sounds great. And out of that, what I think everyone who's listening, and I including myself, I want to know what your ultimate goal is in all of it. Like, you've mentioned a couple different possibilities, but do you have like a kind of a dream ultimate career combo of all these things that you're doing?
um yeah, it's hard. I think that Matt and I have felt for a long time like Europe is a place in general that is more culturally suited to where we would like to be.
Hmm.
Um, I really like the town that I live in, but we are in a deep red state, um, and that's not a small thing to me.
Right.
And and I think just a lot of the little fights that we have culturally here, like whether or not people should die in the street, is not an issue there. And it's so tiring to have those very basic discussions about what human beings should be.
Hmm.
So sometimes I just, I think culturally we're feeling more comfortable there.
Hmm.
So I think what we would really like to do, if a briefcase of cash just like fell from the sky, definitely like to do is move to Italy or Ireland and continue our writing.
Hmm.
Um, it has this is a business for us, but the idea of supporting other like small businesses, family run businesses, and like in terms of the restaurants, some of them are places where they have been making the same dish for 5 generations. I mean, that's just cool. I want to drive people to that. Um, supporting other artists there. I really like that idea. I think we're thinking more realistically financially about maybe trying to uh, buy a home in Ireland and then take a room or two and turning it into a B&B.
Oh, that'd be great.
And seeing if we could figure that out. And um, and then as far as the playing goes, that is a really hard thing, because if I left the United States, I would certainly be leaving my ensemble.
Hmm.
And I don't think that I have the energy to start a whole new one. Um, but I would imagine that we would maybe with maybe what we might try to do is get some like-minded musicians together and put together some programs that of just concerts where we could be playing. Um, there isn't a lot of new American music being played in Italy or Ireland,
Mm.
in small towns. And I think that the kind of music that we have really liked to play um, here in our ensemble is stuff that is some of it is very challenging for audiences, some of it's very accessible, but it's kind of like a musical tapas of many different things.
Mm.
And like I know and I think that it would be appealing to audiences, even those who are used to more standard music, meaning the 150 or so years that everyone draws out of programming from all of the time, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
So it's funny because like, especially in Italy, I think, um, some of my favorite, like the stuff I love to play is stuff that was written within the last 10 years and then stuff that was written before 1700. And some of that stuff written before 1700 is Italian Baroque is so crazy.
Interesting.
But Italians would like that because it's their own culture and history.
Yeah.
You could pair that with new American music and maybe really open some minds there, you know? So I think about that, but when it comes to like starting an entirely new ensemble, that just, you know, I can't.
Right. Well, you know what you know what goes into it. So at least you're educated on that. But I mean, I don't think you're going to have a hard time convincing musicians to come and meet you in Italy or Ireland to put on, a festival or
Right.
just a few concerts, even if it wasn't as convoluted as creating a whole festival. It's just like everything you're saying is like, hey, if you need a horn player, I'm in, like it's awesome. It's great. So that's so great. So, hey, I wondered, what do your musician colleagues think of your travel business? Do they say anything to you about it? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are their general, feedback that you get?
You know, I mean, we don't really hear a lot about it from them too much. I mean, I think it. I'm not really sure. I mean, sometimes I have some of our colleagues that will keep track and of where we're going, but honestly, it's such a unusual thing
Yeah.
to have a separate business, and it also goes against what we're all told, and there's like unspoken things that you're supposed to be focused on this field alone.
Right.
That's it. And if you're not, then you're not taking it very seriously, which I just hate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I think that's so diminishing to ourselves and so restricting.
Right.
So it's like we self restrict as musicians, and then, and maybe like another example would be how we're not supposed to like pop music or something
Right.
ridiculous. Don't let anybody hear you listening to rap or whatever, because you're that's supposed to be beneath you. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you do, then it's that you're not really at a high enough plane bop. But I just can't with all that. So.
Right.
I don't know. It's like, but I do think that it's funny because I am a little sensitive about it, because I think that like we're in a group, in general, I mean, like social group of a lot of travel writers,
Mm.
and then also of musicians, and that never the twain shall meet. The travel writers, and it's kind of funny because in that field, I think they're like, oh, well, you're not really very dedicated to travel writing because you're doing that orchestra thing. It takes up so much time. And then just switch the nouns for the other thing. And it's like, So
Yeah.
what are you going to do? All I can do is, like I said before, my babies are my books and my CDs, and that is the body of my work. And that is what I will be judged on those things. And I'm happy with that.
Right.
There are mistakes in both, and that's okay, but
Right.
they are, that is what I've done. And so I just let that work speak for itself, and then let people say whatever they want. And they just need something to do.
Go get something to do.
Yeah, you need something to do. You look like you need something to do. I mean, it's such a weird field we have with this. I always went against this. Like even in college, I remember when I would listen to a lot of different, back then the struggle wasn't travel writing or anything else like that. It was just my desire to listen to other types of music besides only classical.
Mm.
And there's just so much judgment in our field about stuff like that. And that type of judgment and restricting doesn't create better artists.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more with that. Could
So
not agree more. That's so great. So let me ask you a few final questions.
yeah.
What is one habit or behavior you've developed that has made the most difference in your career so far?
Probably for that, I would have to say the acceptance of endless rejection.
Mm,
Loads, tons of you can't get anywhere if you're not willing to try, and you have to try like 59 times for every one time something's actually going to work.
right.
I mean, that applies to auditions, that applies to learning some new music, that applies to uh like I mean even with our writing, I probably wrote to 400 publishers before I got 3 that were interested. I mean,
Wow.
you know, it was so it's like it,
I'm
it's
glad
just
you mentioned that, because I know that writing a book isn't easy and getting a publisher is even less easy. So I'm glad you shared that because that's a lot of people to write to.
oh my God. I mean, really, I remember there was one week just working on that where I sat for 11 hours every day for 6 days in a row writing to publishers.
Oh, wow.
And it sucks so hard. And, you know, like for Alias, like we write a lot of grants and then you spend hours and hours and hours and hours doing that. And then
Hmm.
back with Buckus, you know,
Yeah.
Um, as an artistic director, I listen to 25 pieces until I find one that I like. I mean, there's just so much, you know, so it's like if it may look on Facebook or look on wherever like, oh, everything is a success, but you know, you haven't, just like you are on stage. If maybe it looks to the audience like you're playing that Bach sonata, and you're just doing it so well and it's fun for you, but they're not seeing the 45 hours that you plowed into it with endless mistakes.
Hmm.
And you had to be willing to deal with those mistakes and accurately assess them to move forward, you know? And like, you know, we all know about auditions and what a flipping nightmare that is.
Right.
So, but the thing is that once you get a job, the rejection isn't over if you want to proceed. I mean, you may not be rejected in the form of, you know, thank you at an audition, but you know, if you want to do something else, like I don't know. So it's like you have to be willing to accept all that rejection and fun judgment from people.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just it is what it is. It's not like I don't mean to make it sound like it's easy, but I do think that if I weren't ready to at least confront all that rejection, I wouldn't I wouldn't have an ensemble, wouldn't have books.
Right.
So, you know, that came at that expense. And then over time, I wouldn't say it necessarily that it gets easier. I'm just, maybe I would say like, you know, when you're 3 years old and you have your first headache and you're like, well, this is just horrible. I cannot deal with this.
Right.
And then when you're 50, you're like, oh, it's a headache.
Yeah.
Okay. You know,
Yeah. I felt that before. It's not that big of a deal.
I mean,
Right.
I know this is going to be over. I don't like this, but you know, it's not the end of the world, and I
Right.
understand what this is now. So it kind of maybe it's like that.
Yeah. Right. And again, like those rejections are just more discomfort to help you grow and help you see something,
Yeah, and
hopefully.
you know,
So,
the first here's something that since we're allowed to curse on this podcast, I introduce a term to you that my best friend helped me with because she was here visiting. Um, boy, I guess it was two summers ago now, or I don't know, but anyway, she was here. And the first publisher that we had, everything fell through with. And
oh,
it happened that happened to come to fore when she was here and got this really very upsetting email. And I was sitting on my couch crying and very stressed about it because getting a publisher and getting a book contract felt like a huge success to me.
mhm.
And like bigger than any audition success I'd had or concert success because I was trained in that.
Right.
And so this felt like having a success in something I actually wasn't trained in. So I was really peacocky about it and very happy about it. And then when it all just went down the toilet, and that was rough. And Matt was actually glad because he was thinking we needed to separate. And
What, from that publisher?
Yeah, he was thinking we needed to separate from that. Yeah, just to be clear, not me and him. We needed to separate from that situation because it wasn't working for us.
Okay.
And anyway, so my best friend said, this is fucked up, but it's an opportunity. It's a fuckertunity. And so there are actually like a lot of fuckertunities that I've noticed since then. And it helped me a lot. And so sometimes when something goes horribly wrong, it can be your inclination to just hit the bottle and go down the toilet. But it could be a fuckertunity,
Yeah.
And so,
you never know what's next after that fuckertunity happens.
That term has helped me immensely since then with a lot of other things where I realized, like, well, wait a minute, maybe this is not what I planned. I did not want this. And if you'd asked me 15 minutes ago, I would have said that is a disaster. But maybe it's not the worst thing. It's seriously, it's changed so much of the way that I've looked at a lot of things, even small things like just last week we were in Italy researching for our book because we're doing the second edition, and so just something small like, oh, this restaurant that we needed to get needed in quotes to get for the book is closed. Oh my God, this is terrible. Something small like that, and oh, this is terrible. I can't believe this is, now we're going to have to take another trip just to get to this place. That's a night, bop, beep, da, da, da. But it actually turned into something where you found an equivalent or better place.
Right.
And so it's just something small like that, losing a book contract, that was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Something really small like that helped me, be able to look at it in a different way and to think, well, if I didn't pass this audition for this orchestra, maybe that really actually wasn't a good fit for me.
Right.
Or whatever.
Yeah. And you can't see it in the moment, but, ask me in a week, ask me in a year, whatever.
Yeah. And that's hard because it's like, I don't want it to sound like I'm just like delusional riding my unicorn and rainbows and not being realistic, but it's helpful because it's so easy when you have to deal with so much rejection, and you really do in this field. It's so easy to just get really Eeyore about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you try to find ways, and it's a weird field, our thing too, because in order to get better, to be better artists, we have to be able to accurately assess what we are hearing coming out of our instruments. And so how, there's so much pressure to just be safe and to be perfect. And of course that's so boring. So it's hard as artists to try to present ourselves in an actually interesting way, because that means you'll be roundly criticized. And it's like we have to be strong inside as artists to constantly to grow and to put something out that is worth people paying attention to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally. So what would you like to promote?
Oh boy. What would I like to promote? How about voting in 2018? And no. Okay, so I guess I would say, and we've been just talking about it, which is our books. And next year we are doing an Alias. We are doing our fourth CD, which I am really excited about, which is going to be inspired by Tennessee rhythms and roads. and has two composers from within our ensemble, plus Tracy Silverman joining us. And we are doing something that I hope other musicians might consider imitating if they so desired, which is next season we will be presenting our series of concerts will be 100% music of American immigrants.
Oh, that's nice.
And doing that has been such an eye-opener to me of just the depth and breadth of diversity and the wealth of it that we have here, and how impactful and meaningful that is, and something worth preserving and fighting for.
That's incredible. I can't wait to hear all about that. And you have a book coming out. The Ireland book is coming out.
The Ireland book has just released.
Okay.
And
are those available on Amazon?
Yep, you can get them on Amazon. There's printed copies, and there's Kindle copies, and it's 8 itineraries. It takes you all around the island and in 8 different regions. And all of our books are written in a narrative style, so they're meant to be practical guides. You can take them with you on a trip or use them to plan a trip, but they are also meant for people who aren't actually traveling, who just want to read and transport yourself to that place for an afternoon. So
that's so cool.
All the pictures and like anecdotes and telling you a lot of the history of the area and history of the food, and so you can learn a lot about the place. And so, yeah, they're meant to be. It's not like a Fodor's, which is just like a dry. Here's what this is. They're meant to be almost like a little mini novel that you could then follow if you were there.
Oh, that's so awesome! So I'm definitely in the show notes. I'll put links to the Amazon pages with the books, and I'll put a link to your ensemble page. And are your CDs available on iTunes or Amazon or all the above? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just get a whole slew of links so that when you become a Zeneba fan like I just have, you can go to all those links and buy all those things, because I can tell you right now, I'm going to buy those books. I cannot wait.
Oh, cheers. Well,
I
hope you like them, and I'm really I'm proud of them. We took all the pictures are ours, and the layout is really beautiful because it was not done by us. And actually, here's a funny side note I'll just tell you really quick. Each itinerary starts with a hand-drawn map. Okay. And for the very first guide, the one that I told you we did just ourselves, we tried to include maps, and what we did, neither of us can draw for shit. So we tried to do a map, and it's not meant to be perfectly to scale, but just to give you an idea of what area you're talking about. And so we tried doing them freehand, and it was horrible. Mm-hmm. And so after we laughed at those for a while and burned them, then we downloaded some Google Maps and just traced over it with pencil, which, how hard could that be? And how could it get fucked up? I don't know. It still looked like an ape did it. It was terrible. Neither one of us could do it. Even tracing, it was so embarrassing. So we had a friend who is a graphic designer who did the maps for us. And then our publisher did the whole layout, and she did a great job. So
that's awesome. I love it. I can't wait to see it. And I have to get hard copies. And you know what I was just thinking? What a great gift to people for their wedding. Like, if you're ever looking for an unusual gift for someone for wedding presents, I mean, awesome.
I won't argue with you there. It's funny because we have done so many honeymoons. We have made these honeymoons for people, and that's a really neat thing because it ends up being they return to that again and again, as you do.
Yeah, and it's so much more unique than, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be awesome to go to a big city, and I'm definitely still going to go there, but this is it's so many stories I'm sure that you get from personalized experiences, meeting locals in these really small places. It must be really special because I don't imagine that they have the magnitude of tourism that cities like Rome and
No way. And it's really kind of funny because, like, here's an example. Last week we were in this little town which I adore. It's called Brisighella, and it's in the east of Emilia Romagna, and it's like a painted town. So like all the buildings are different pastel colors, and it's surrounded by 3 peaks, and on each peak is a different thing. One is a clock tower.
uh-huh.
One is a castle, and the other is a convent. And then, like, under these 3 peaks is this gorgeous little town that you could walk through in 15 minutes, and no one is there. I mean, Brisighella people are there, but like you do not find a lot of tourists there, and I don't understand why, because it looks like a movie set.
Wow.
There, and it's just incredible. And it's like, I think you might have seen on Facebook, I posted a bunch of pictures of it, and when you're sitting there, you just can't, like, where the hell is everybody? But it's that type of thing. And I think that it's things, it's funny because when we first put the books out, I wondered, like, is it a mistake to include these things in there? Because what if people actually go to it and, like, ruin it? Like, what if we end up saying, but I'm not that worried about it, because I'd love it. That would be great. But I don't think we're in any danger of getting so popular that it'll ruin those places. So yeah. I'm counting on that lack of success to keep these places, like, hidden enough that you'd still enjoy them. But it's funny because people don't go to them. And one of the things that I get it more in Italy, because people are afraid to go into, like, smaller towns in a country in which you'd have to speak a foreign language. You don't have to speak Italian in these little towns, but I get that people think that. Mm-hmm. But what was really interesting to me when we were putting together our Ireland book was that that restriction doesn't exist there. Obviously, everybody speaks English there, but still, all these places that we've listed are not in other books, and it's like Americans still only go to the biggest places there.
Interesting.
And so even in the little towns, like when the very little towns that we're visiting there, and we tell them we're doing a guide, and they say, "Oh, so are you going to go to, like, Limerick and Galway?" And we're like, "Well, no. and they don't get it. They're like, "What?" So it's interesting. It's just, I don't know. What are you going to do? But somehow these places haven't been covered yet. So we're hoping that we can bring a new light to them.
I think it's so exciting. Thank you so much, Zeneba, for being on the show today. And I've really enjoyed talking to you. And everyone who's listening, if you're enjoying Crushing Classical, please write a review on iTunes and join the conversation on Facebook at the Facebook page, facebook.com/Crushing Classical, and Instagram at Crushing Classical. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening today. Hey, listen, I have a huge favor to ask you, and it will only take a few seconds. If you like this show, one way that you can let us know is by writing a review on iTunes and subscribing to the podcast. Writing a review will help other people to find the podcast and help us immensely. It will only take a few minutes. Just head over to iTunes and search for Crushing Classical. There, you can write a review and click subscribe. Thanks again.